Because here's what happens when you connect with someone for more time, that initial falling in love level of excitement that is unsustainable for long periods of time is going to come down to a more natural level. What remains is really important for you to acknowledge.
This is By Joy Joanne Season 2. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Our guest today is someone who brings heart, depth, and a refreshing level of honesty to the world of modern relationships. He's a dating and relationship coach with over 14 years of experience, trained by Tony Robbins and certified in strategic interventions. He specializes in helping high achieving, purpose driven women over 40 stop self abandoning in love and finally attract emotionally available, deeply committed partners. His approach blends neuroscience, emotional attunement, and real world strategy to help women break painful patterns, release toxic dynamics, and reconnect with their true worth. He's here today to empower you to build relationships that feel secure, empowering, and real. So, guys, help me welcoming one of the most trusted voices in women's dating advice worldwide, Bernardo Mendez. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Jan, thank you so much for having me here. Excited to have a conversation with you.
Yep. I think I'm the most excited one, not just my audience. So yeah, I mean, I would love to start with talking about the nervous system because it's something that you talk a lot about in your work.
Sure.
And you often say your nervous system might be choosing your partners, might be choosing your relationship. So talk to us about that. How does it actually influence who we are attracting in relationship without us even realizing it?
I'd say I'll take a little step back and say that beyond nervous system, if you just think about your emotional states to start off, think about being in a state of happiness or joy, or maybe connected to your purpose versus a state of fear or anxiety or doubt, or maybe a little bit of guilt. The emotional state you're in is going to determine how much access you have to your current capacity. Your capacity is pretty vast. What you can do with your capacity is dependent upon the framing and your the software basically that's running the show. So when I talk about nervous system choosing your partners, it means that if you are consistently in a state of fight or flight, if you're consistently in a state of dysregulation, then the partners you choose are going to be partners that are attempting to soothe that in a way that maybe feels exciting for the moment, but not sustainable long term. So another way of looking at this would be if you're someone who is, for example, really, I don't know, fearful and really connected, or you have maybe haven't processed emotional pain from your past, then it's very likely that you're going to be choosing people who remind you of what home is like for you. Maybe home for you is a place where love is not very kind, or a place where love is inconsistent. So you are training basically the way your brain is wiring at that moment of your childhood. And that's what it's basically going to continue searching for. So maybe you connect with someone later in life who is, if you're a woman, great guy, solid, stable. But if your brain and nervous system have been wired for that inconsistency and that's what you're craving, then you're going to find that person boring. And you're going to tell your friends that, oh, there's just something missing in him. And maybe the something that's missing is the drama or the pain or the emotional ups and downs, roller coasters.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. So yeah, I mean, let's go even deeper because I know this is so true, right?
uh,
So often we hear people say, he's just boring. He doesn't have any hobby. He's stable. He's always there for me. He's just boring, right?
yeah.
So what is really going on there. I know it's about the like you said, our emotional state. If we are always looking for drama, always looking for chaos, that is what we are attracted to in men in relationship. But yeah, what does that really mean when we say we are looking for something that feels like home? For people who are just not understanding it, I know what you mean by like childhood trauma and all that, but for people, my listeners who are listening, they might not know what we are talking.
Sure. I'll give you an analogy that I recently talked about in one of my videos that I think will make sense. Imagine the way you learn that love is as a thermostat in your home. So if you have an AC and a heater and you can regulate it electronically, let's say that you, growing up, learn that love is 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So that feels comfortable for you. It's not necessarily good, but it feels comfortable because it's familiar. Okay. So when your thermostat, metaphorically speaking, is set at 70 degrees, and then later in life you look at around and maybe you see a couple of movies and you see that people fall head over heels and they live happily ever after, and you say, well, the things that I experienced, I mean, that's not as cool as what I'm seeing right now on the screen. I want to go for that. So you have this idea, I want to go for something that feels fun and exciting and passionate and not dysregulated and not disrespectful and not abusive, then you need to change the thermostat to a different temperature. Metaphorically speaking, if you don't know that, you're going to go out and create connections in the world while secretly looking for that temperature. So you connect with someone, let's say you connect with someone who you don't really know, but there's a lot of chemistry right off the bat, and your nervous system speaking up on cues, a little bit of how the person talks, what the person says, what the person doesn't say, the way they breathe, the way they look at you, the way they interact with other human beings, that might basically help you calibrate, okay, this person, I don't know what it is. And the thing that you don't know what it is, it's basically sometimes it's just chemistry, but sometimes it's chemistry added with the set point of your thermostat. So if the person is somewhat of a gaslighter, if the person is going to be somewhat inconsistent, and that's what you've learned, then that person represents the thing you feel comfortable with. So what I help my clients do when we work together is to recognize that in order for you to really be able to reset that thermostat, you need to take more time to get to know the people in front of you, because society at large tells us that when you connect with someone, you should know right away if it's going to be a yes or a no. And almost if your heart doesn't burst open and the angels don't sing, then he's not the one. So, I mean, in the United States, there's been surveys done, and 60% of the population believe on the myth that there's the one. The one means there's only one human being out of 4 billion of the opposite sex who would be a great fit for you. So, if you believe in that, if you believe there's the one, and then you also believe that it should be instant, then when you connect with someone, if it's not instant, they're not the one. So you should move on to the next person. But when you take a much more scientific approach and a much more nuanced approach, and you connect with people and you give them more time for the friendship to develop, more time for the connection to grow, more time for the chemistry to blossom, doesn't mean that it always will, but it might, then you can determine with a bit more nuance if that person is going to be the right fit for you or not, and you're the right fit for them or not. Also, when you slow down the chemical process of connecting with somebody physically, you also make it easier for you to be able to distinguish if the person has some big glaring red flags or not. You know, they've done studies. I mean, Helen Fisher and a few other scientists have done studies where they take somebody's brain who recently fell in love, and they've done tests, and they get people who are addicted to cocaine, and the same regions of the brain with a similar level of intensity light up, which means falling in love is in many ways very similar to being addicted to cocaine. When you understand that, then
Yeah.
you know that if you slow down, you'll be much more able to make the right decision in terms of who's the right partner for you. If you don't, if you just go with the flow and your natural uh, your default mechanism is maybe optimizing for intensity instead of sustainability, or looks instead of qualities, then that's when we get into trouble, because you can actually connect with someone really fall for them. And by fall for them, it doesn't mean that you really fell in love with them, but it means your nervous system really gets activated with them. And it can also become a little bit addictive and obsessive. So by the time you want to pull away from them, you can't, because it feels really painful, you know? So I think it's slowing down would be a concept that, even though it sounds like grandpa advice, it might be one of the things that saves you from years of pain, from connecting with someone that's not the right fit for you. You don't recognize it. You end up falling for them, and then you get really attached. And then by the time you want to get unattached, it's a little too late, and you might spend an extra 2 years with someone who really emotionally drains you, and lowers your self esteem for a while.
Oh my god, that was so good. And I have so many questions. All right. I love when you say, you are not, maybe you are not falling in love. It's just your nervous system gets activated. That's like,
Yeah.
wow. I never heard that before. So in that, okay, let's say, and I think that's the problem with modern relationship today is
Uh,
it's like we don't have time. We if we don't like the person on the first date, we just not hang out with them anymore. We just ghost them, right? We just find another one,
mm,
especially if you're using dating apps, right? It's so easy to ghost someone and find a new one and see if you have chemistry with that person in like just one date, right? So let's say if this is your client, right? She goes out with a guy on the first date, and she doesn't really like that person because he's boring, right? He's
mm,
stable, he's emotionally available, he's boring, and so there's no chemistry really.
mm.
Does it mean that it's not the right fit, or it just needs more time to grow, to nurture, and to understand the other person?
I think both are possibilities. I think there's going to be a chance of somebody going out with someone and it's really not a great fit for that person. And there's going to be never chemistry with that human being. And there's no shared values. And it's just really a boring experience, not just the first date, but every single date. There's also the chance that that person could be someone that needs more time to warm up, and that needs more time for the reciprocation of the vulnerability, aspect to come out on both ends. So I don't like to think about things necessarily in a black and white scheme. If a client connects with someone and the person really feels completely the wrong fit for them, I'm not going to gently suggest go out with them again. If the person is not necessarily a zero in terms of I would never want to see this person again, but maybe is emotionally, if you have a scale of 0 to 10, a 4 or a 5, then there's room for more, you know? And then the question when you connect with this person again should be, do I feel a bit more connected? Do I feel more compelled? Do I feel more attracted to this person? Do I feel more chemistry? You can do that up to 3 times. And if it doesn't pan out, if you feel less connected and less attracted to the person, then never see them again. If you feel slightly more connected, then you can make the determination based on more things you know about him, if you should continue seeing the person or not. So it's going to be a toss up. Sometimes it's going to be a yes, this person is going to be the wrong fit. Sometimes it's going to be it's the right fit but needs more time. And sometimes it's going to be an amazing fit, not just the right fit, but it's going to require more depth of conversation, more open ended questions, a bit more of that, also putting more skin in the game. I find that many of my clients, when they connect with someone who they find really attractive, they get a little sweaty palm, and they get a little anxious, and they get almost as if trying to want him to like them more. So they get a little weird. But if they connect with someone that they don't have that chemistry for, they don't care. They could be themselves. They could share anything. They're not afraid of losing the connection, so they can share more. So I'd say if you connect with someone and you're not really feeling it, go a bit more, go 1 degree more in terms of vulnerability, 1 degree more in terms of you being present, listening to the person. There's an infinite dynamic taking place between two human beings, which is the listener and the speaker are simultaneously impacting each other in more ways than one. So if you connect with someone and you are instantly like, oh, this is not the person, and then you lower your intensity and your energy and your radiance, and you're less present, then that person who could have been an amazing partner for you might feel a little disengaged and might also share less of himself. And then it didn't happen not because it couldn't have happened, but because both people half-assed it, so to speak. So what I like to share with my clients is you have a standard for how you show up on dates. irrespective of the other person. You have a standard for radiance, for presence, for awesomeness. If the person's not the right fit for you, you take that human being who's open and radiant and present to the next date. If you start lowering your standard based on the person in front of you, then you start lowering that vibe. And when you go to the next date, that's the person you take with you. So you've practiced enough just not showing up fully. So my whole thing is show up fully for you, and then the pieces will fall where they may, because the person more likely than not will act more powerfully for you, maybe than for other people. But if it's not the right fit, then you are still growing in the process of dating.
So what you're saying, showing up fully as you means on a first date, for example, to at least this is what I'm understanding right now, is to show up as who you really are, who you truly are, all your flaws, all your vulnerability, all your imperfections in front of someone that you just met for the first time.
Well, I'll share it a little bit different. I'd say you show up fully as yourself, and it's not your full vulnerability. It's a bit more vulnerable than you're comfortable with, like 1 degree more vulnerable than you're comfortable with. If you're your full vulnerable self, you might reveal things to that person that the person hasn't earned, and you don't even know the person's safe. So that person might use those things against you. So the safer way that still puts you on the edge is to be a 1 degree more courageous, 1 degree more present, 1 degree more radiant, and then allow the person to respond. And based on that response, you can choose to continue investing in that person or not. But the standard is still I show up fully for myself, and the person is the person, and they deserve my respect. But it's not going to be the person's great, so I was incredibly funny and flirty. The person's not great, so I was boring. I'm not going to say force it, but at the same time, you carry something within you that is the expression of you, and that's your music and your song. Obviously, that song is going to be affected by the person in front of you, but there should be a minimum standard that you show up with, regardless of the person you're connecting with. And if you carry that along your encounters, not just your dates, but when you go out and go to the grocery store, when you go out to drop your laundry, when you go to a meeting where there's new people that you've not connected with, then you have that energy that makes it easy for people to connect with you, where something might happen. I mean, I tell my clients this thing: between the time you haven't met the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with and the time you do meet that person, sometimes there's 1 second of difference. You're sitting at a table and you look across the room and there's someone interesting, and you either say hi or not, you either smile or not. That person could be the person you spend the rest of your life with. So if you're always leaving from that place that even though it hasn't happened, it can happen, then you take a lot of effort in how you show up.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. Not just in relationship, but every day when you show up, when you go out, right? When
Yeah,
you, yeah, everywhere. The other question is, I want to go back to something you said earlier, which I really impressed by, which is your nervous systems gets activated. It's not just chemistry, right?
sure.
Or you're not falling in love. So let's say again, I have so many let's say example scenario. Um, if you really like that person, you feel like there's a strong chemistry.
Mhm.
You are quote unquote in love with that person, like you
Sure.
like that person so much that you want to see him again. In that moment, how do you what is the question that you need to ask yourself to know whether it's your nervous system gets activated or this is really the one?
Well, here's the thing. So they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. If you fall in love for real with someone, your nervous system is acting up in very specific ways. There's neurochemicals taking place that are going to be consistent across people who fall in love. So it doesn't mean that it's just your nervous system. But what I'm saying is that sometimes what you feel is falling in love with someone is something else. So for you to know if you're really falling in love with someone versus this is just some infatuation that's taking place where your nervous system is being hijacked by and your mind is basically being shut off with thinking, you need the variable that you can't do without, which is time. Because here's what happens: when you connect with someone for more time, that initial falling in love level of excitement that is unsustainable for long periods of time is going to come down to a more natural level. What remains is really important for you to acknowledge. If what remains is you feel less seen, less connected, less self worthy, then that initial period was maybe just a roller coaster. If what remains is a deep friendship, what remains is you feeling more secure about yourself, if you feel more confident, if you feel more supported, then that initial n- chemical brainstorm that you experience is something that can actually help you grow and sustain with time. So it's really having the time to know if the person is who you thought they were, because there's a lot of projection that takes place at the beginning of connecting with someone. And then naturally, through going through hard time, through having to solve a conflict, through spending time with family and friends, you're going to figure out, does the person have the values that align with mine? It doesn't have to be the exact same values, but it does mean that there's a respect. The other part that you're going to determine with more time is the person's ability to solve conflicts with you. If you look at the work that the Gottmans have done in terms of being able to decipher with high degree of accuracy, 93%, I think 90 to 93% of accuracy, sitting down with a couple in a few minutes, uh, if that person's going to be, if they're going to stay together or they're going to get divorced, what they really look at is when people are in conflict, how do they solve that conflict? What are the positive versus negative reinforcements that take place? What's the ratio? It's typically 5 to 1. Couples that stay together for a long time, they have 5 positive versus 1 negative interactions when things are shitty, not when things are great. So if you're able to solve conflict in a way where you're still respectful, you're still understanding each other, you're still kind, then you have the basis for something. It doesn't mean that it's going to last, but at least it has the potential to last. If you're someone who has a lot of chemistry with someone and even some shared values, but you can't see eye to eye when there's conflict, if you don't, if you're not respectful, if you're not talking to each other in a way that allows both of you to feel seen and heard, then you can have great chemistry. You can have even a lot of values, but the relationship's not going to last because there's going to be that consistent feeling of uh, unsolvable pain. And it's not because it can't be solved, but because the way you communicate with your partner determines uh, how solvable the problem is. And the way you communicate with your partner also has to do a lot with how each partner's nervous system is regulated. If you have two dysregulated human beings, then you can have the best intentions, but you're not going to be able to solve conflict powerfully. If you have two regulated human beings, you may not have all the skills, but you'll have the patience and you'll have the breath to be able to attempt to solve things in a different way.
How do we regulate our, you speak a lot about emotional
Yeah.
attunement. How do we regulate our emotional nervous system or attunement?
Okay, well, regulation of the nervous system has multiple different parts. You could have something as tactical as conscious breathing in the midst of an argument. You can start breathing. You can take there's a very specific breathing pattern that's inhaling to the count of 4, holding for 7 seconds, exhaling for 8. That would be a tactic, for example, that can help you to regulate in the midst of feeling dysregulated, in the midst of really feeling angry. Your limbic brain is activated. Your amygdala basically is flaring up. It's like a smoke alarm inside your brain that's saying, "Hey, there's fire," even though it may not be fire. So when you do that, you're able to go from this part of your brain to this part of your brain that makes better decisions and makes planning possible and communicates more effectively. So that would be one way that's tactical in nature. But beyond the tactics, I think the way you live your life is going to determine if you have a regulated nervous system or not. How many hours you sleep and what's the quality of your sleep? What's your nutrition like? How many days a week do you exercise and move? What kind of social construct you create for yourself, what level of friendships and connections you have. All those things really play a large role into how easy it is for you to regulate. So when you have a nervous system where you're eating healthy and you're taking good supplements, you're breathing, you're journaling when things get really challenging, you have multiple ways at different in different areas of your life to make it easier for you to regulate. So it's not just one thing. I think it's the way you live your life, but I think it's important in moments of high stress to take a step back. In conflict, for example, in couples, there's something called a timeout. You know, Terry Real talks a lot about this. A conscious timeout is not where you say, okay, well, you're making me angry, so I'm out. No, no, it's where you say, I am not feeling my best self right now. So I'm going to take 5 minutes to calm down and come back and be a better self as we communicate. When you do that, guess what happens? People are about to metaphorically kill each other, and then one of the person who becomes the most adult, takes ownership of it. Because if I say to you, Joanne, hey, you know what? You're pissing me off. So I'm going to take a time out. That's going to be fun for you. You're going to resent me for that. But if I say, I'm not able to keep my best self right now, so I'm going to take 5 minutes out and come back and maybe continue this. When you come back, both people regulate. When you come back, there's more of a chance of something being solved. Now, it's not a guarantee. You can come back and things still flare up. And that's when things happen like that all the time, where there's topics you can't have conscious conversations about. That's when you raise your hand and ask for help if you're in a relationship, because
Mm.
otherwise you're trying to read the label of the cereal box from inside, and it's hard because you're not seeing what you're not seeing.
Conscious timeout. What if the other person, your partner, when you need a timeout, right? When you say to him or her, I need a timeout. I am not feeling at my best self right now. Let's come back to this 5 minutes later. And that person is not doing any of the work. He's not listening to this podcast, and he doesn't know what a timeout is. He said, "No, no, no. You stay. I want the answer right now. I want to solve this right now. You can't go away. You can't avoid." And because I think, I don't know, I could be wrong because I'm not the expert, but if you are walking away from an argument, for example, it might be a pattern of avoidant, attachment style, right? You are the avoidant, you have the avoidant attachment style because you don't want to face it, you just want to walk away. I know it's only for 5 minutes, but still, it could be that. So yeah, what do you think of that?
Well, two parts to it. I think the first one would be the differentiation between your attachment style and consciously deciding to be in a regulated uh, state to be able to not hurt your partner. Because here's the thing, here's what happens. Here's what someone who, if you're truly avoidant, then you would just not care. You could just completely disengage in that interaction and just say yes, yes, or no, no, and basically tune out. Or maybe you could avoid the topic altogether. So I think that when you have the consciousness to say, this is difficult for me, but it's more difficult if I'm feeling this way and I don't want to disrespect you. So that's why you actually have a time limit. That's why you don't say, "No, let's talk about this later." Later could mean never. Later could flare up, especially if the other person is maybe slightly more anxiously attached, might feel abandoned in that moment. So that's why the conscious timeout is not just saying, "Hey, I don't like what you're saying, so maybe we'll revisit this, maybe we won't." Is basically saying, "I need to calm down and I'll be back here in 5, 10, 20 minutes." So but you really take the time to do something. You're not just going out and then spewing and getting more agitated. You really take the time to be your better self. So when you come back, you do that. Now, the other part of the question is, what if your partner doesn't want to do that? I think if you're in a relationship that's going to last, you're going to have to, when things are not challenging, when things are okay, establish some ground rules. Here's the things we can say. Here's the things we can't say. So you wouldn't necessarily talk about it the first time. When you're really pissed, you would say, "Hey, if this ever happens to us, let's agree right now what's going to be the standard so we have a chance." So you already agree with that when people are not throwing turds at each other. And when the time comes, you can pull back, "Hey, remember the thing we agreed on? I'm just activating that part of the plan." But at the end of the day, if you have a partner who doesn't believe in science or in psychology and doesn't want to grow, then the better question would be, do you really want to spend time with that partner, knowing that your chances of having a healthy relationship are very minimal, if not nothing? Or do you want to communicate to that partner that you need some change to be able to stay together? And that change that doesn't necessarily mean uh, go to 5 years of therapy, but at least be willing to learn from people who have taken decades to study how relationships work instead of trying to wing it. I think that a lot of people these days have this false idea that relationships at the level that we seek are a natural thing, that love is natural, and love, the feeling is natural. Love the experience where you get to spend 90 years with someone and have a physical, sexual, spiritual, and emotional connection has never happened in human history ever. So because it's something relatively new and it's something that's super high stake in terms of the level of intensity we seek, intensity in intimacy, intensity in connection, then if we don't learn the skills, we have very little chances of succeeding at that level. And I'm not saying that there's couples that never learned this stuff and have a great relationship. That is true. And at the same time, it's not the majority of couples. I think if you want something really conscious, then you should be able to take the time, to learn the skills, because love is a skill, not just a feeling.
Love is a skill, it's not a feeling. I love that.
It's a feeling and a skill. So it's not just a feeling. It's also a feeling. But yeah,
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I love that. Yeah, it's something that you can learn, right? Love is a skill,
yeah.
but you need to find someone first, I believe. Um, if intense chemistry or toxic dynamics is not healthy, as we all know, what should a healthy relationship look and feel like instead?
Well, I'll say there's a difference between intense chemistry and toxic relationships. You can have intense chemistry in a relationship that lasts. It just doesn't. It's just not intense chemistry all the time. So I don't want to share a message that says, well, it's either boring or a chemistry but addictive. No, no, no. You can have something that's intense in a healthy way and sustainable. It's just that there's going to be a balance between the chemistry and also the feelings of discomfort and the feelings of presence and the feelings of calm connection, not just exciting connection. Uh, so a healthy relationship, to answer your question, a healthy relationship is a relationship where, for the most part, you become a better human being as a result of the relationship, where you feel like you can put your best self and help the other person, and the other person is willing to do the same thing. It's a relationship where you are, it's not easy, but it's not pulling teeth. There's a difference. I think that people go with the relationships are not easy, so they connect with someone who is incredibly toxic, and they tell themselves it shouldn't be easy. Well, it shouldn't be easy, but it also shouldn't be something that is just a walk in the park, or something. I'm sorry, it shouldn't be easy, but it shouldn't be something that is incredibly disrespectful and chaotic. I think that there's a balance. So uh, I think at the end of the day is, are you growing as a human being? Do you feel seen and heard? Do you feel respected? Do you have moments of fun and play? Do you feel supported? Do you feel called to support the person? I mean, those are some basic elements. If you have a relationship that has those elements, then you're on the healthier side of things. If you have a relationship where there's a lot of intensity, but there's also a lot of miscommunication, a lot of gaslighting, or some gaslighting, even, if you have a relationship where you don't understand each other, but there's no curiosity to bridge the gap, but there's more like, you're wrong and I'm right. That's more on the unhealthy side. And the challenging thing with an unhealthy relationship is that the part of your brain that gets attached, to someone, when you want to disattach from someone, it's the same part of your brain that experiences physical pain. So sometimes when you connect with someone and it's not the right person for you, and you can't get yourself to detach from them, people get to think all sorts of things. I'm flawed, I'm broken, I have low self-esteem. And sometimes it's not low self-esteem, is your brain is activated in a way that needs more help than just the willpower. So it's important for people not to feel the stigma of uh, lack of intelligence or lack of emotional capacity, when sometimes they just need to soothe in a different way and get help. There's therapy that's incredibly helpful. Coaching in some ways is really helpful as well, depending upon where you are in this in the challenge. But I think there's something powerful to be said about when you catch yourself for weeks and months struggling with something, raising your hand to get some help from someone who knows what they're doing can eliminate years of trial and error. Because sometimes we're trying down the wrong rabbit hole. Like, we're knocking on the door, but we're knocking from the inside. So having someone share with you, here's exactly what's happening, and here's to go around it, sometimes makes it easier for you not to feel bad about yourself, and to create a plan of action that helps you out of that rut in months versus years.
And you are very passionate about working with high achieving, successful, smart women over 40. And what would you say is the biggest blind spot for them, in terms of when it comes to dating and relationship and finding a partner? And what is the biggest blind spot these smart, successful, high
Mm.
achieving women have in common?
I think that there's two blind spots. One of them is thinking that the same energy and the same level of strategy that has gotten them to be really successful and to have an MBA or a master's degree and a PhD and to succeed and climb the corporate ladder is the same type of strategy that can help them connect with a man. So that's the first thing, going with that pushing energy versus more relaxed and more connective energy and more vulnerable, which is the opposite of what you need sometimes to succeed in business. So that's the first one. Second one is not realizing that the specific data points basically call for a non-traditional approach to solving the problem. What I mean by that is, to give you an example, I've been conducting some research on a lot of data points for women in midlife, and I'll share one of the data points right now, which impacts women in many different countries. Um, I'm not sure Singapore the percentage, but I know, for example, in Japan the percentage is not necessarily. I know in South Korea and in Japan the so I have to imagine it's going to be similar in Singapore, which is for every I mean, if you take 10 women
Hmm.
who are high achievers, and by high achievers right now, I'm talking about something even more basic, median income, like median income, and they have a college degree. There's 10 women for 6 men in the U.S. There's 5 women. There's I'm sorry. There's 10 women for 5 men in Japan. Australia, Canada. I mean, there's different patterns like that, and there's reasons for that. I mean, including women have been really progressing in education, and men have been lagging behind. So that's one of many data points. So if you understand that there's that supply and demand issue, then you need to do something to make sure that you're going for what you really want versus what you've been told to go for. If you have I'll give you an example of sometimes how unconsciously people disqualify themselves out of the dating pool. I connect with a woman and she says, I only like tall men. Okay. And so he must be 6'2". That means that in the first wish that she had in the US, she disqualified 93% of men on her first wish, and she has maybe 30 other wishes. So mathematically becomes impossible at some point. So my whole thing is to help my clients to figure out what are the things that are real standards and what are the things that are maybe more negotiable that you can play with so you can expand the pool and not take yourself out of contention by simply unconsciously choosing things that don't sustainably create success in relationships. Height has never been a factor in terms of relationship success. It's not a thing. Quality shared values is, so if you start going for things that are more essential and less materialistic, and it's the equivalent of a guy saying, hey, I only want women with double D breasts. Okay. I mean, he could have that wish, but he's going to eliminate so many amazing intelligent women who don't have double D size breasts. So it's unnecessary, but I mean, you can take it as it's a must, but should it really be a must? So helping my clients determine what's necessarily what's a real need versus what's a nice to have, and also how to stand out. Because if you know there's a supply and demand balance, even if you expand the pool, you need to be able to be authentically you, so that it's easier for the person to identify you as someone who is the right fit for him, even from first impressions, even than if you're keeping your guard down and not expressing yourself and maybe being more shady about who you are. You might miss on many opportunities because sometimes there's no second chances. So having the ability to express yourself more powerfully, express your radiance more consistently, and tweak those levers in a way that serve you instead of what you think should be, makes a huge difference in terms of expanding the pool of men and also creating that connection a lot sooner.
Do you help your clients create a list? Like your type list, basically. Like, what is your type? And this is the list that I'm looking for in a partner. Yeah, because I really like when you mentioned like real need versus nice to have, because I think a list would be nice to have.
I have my clients create two lists. One is the list of the values that they really want in a partner. The other one is the list of who they need to be able to be an equal match to that partner. You know, and so there's that, but there's also the ability to at least see and help them question their own list, not to lower their standards, but to expand their pool. I'll give you an example, and I shared this recently in an interview. I have a client who had on her list, the guy must not have pets. Okay. So she ended up. figure it out. I mean, I wanted to find out if it's something that she went through some trauma growing up, or she's a strong allergy to dogs, for example. And it was not. It's just like, I just don't like pets. And I challenge her on that. I say, okay, well, what if you did? What if you open yourself? What if you change that thing from must not have dogs to open to him having dogs? She changed that one. And guess what? She ended up connecting with a guy who has an amazing dog. She married the guy, and she feels in love with the dog right now.
Wow.
If she had stayed with that really closed criteria, which is absolutely a nice to have, it's not a
Yep.
must, as determined in real actions for her, then she would have missed out on having an amazing husband. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I've connected with a client who was, and again, this is more challenging than the dog situation, but she's the guy must not have children. And I said, well, what if having children means he's more of a giver? What if he's learned to be more selfless as a result of having children? Are all guys who have children the same? If he has children but he creates time for you, would that be an option for you? He said, you know what, I'm open. She ended up being with a guy who has 4 children. Okay, incredibly happy with a guy, and they have they have a situation where uh, it works for them. That you have to here's the thing: at this day and age, you have to figure out what works for you, and you have to be willing to tweak some variables so that you're happy. That might mean not living with a person. That might mean having more distance geographically, but still being able to make time for each other. There's multiple variations right now of relationships that don't fit the mold of we live in the same house and we are married till death do us part, that can work for people. So helping human beings figure out what's best for them at the specific stage in life they're in, again, creates more options as well.
I love that. And a lot of men find high achieving, successful, smart women intimidating. How true is that? And as a man, and and how can if this is true, how can we start to shift this dynamic?
I think, I mean, in my experience, there will be men who are intimidated by successful women and who are high achieving. And there's going to be men who are not intimidated by high achieving women. They're just not interested in the level of connection they feel with them or from them. So I'll make the difference right now. Here's a guy who feels insecure about himself. Here's a guy who has not maybe achieved much in life or relative to the person. So for that person, the woman is intimidating. Now, that is not to be confused with a guy who has his stuff worked out and connects with a woman who is high achieving, but she's not being vulnerable enough, inviting enough, friendly enough, radiant enough. So it's not that he's intimidated. He just doesn't see enough emotional depth and connection to connect with her. Now, if you make the assumption that all men who don't connect with me find me intimidating, then you won't necessarily work on the vulnerability aspect on your side of the fence that would make some of those men incredibly connected to you. Here's the way I say it: you have a woman who's a high achiever, she's incredibly successful in work and financially, and she's warm and open and friendly and radiant. That's an incredibly powerful and enticing combination for any guy who has his shit worked out. That same woman with more coldness and less openness is like, no, I mean, like, that's not exciting enough for someone who is looking for that depth of connection and that vulnerability. Because at the end of the day, if a guy is high achieving himself, he wants to add value to the woman's life. And if that woman is showing up with this energy of, I have everything covered, you can add no value to my life, then that guy is not going to feel compelled to step up. And he might connect with someone who's far less high achiever and less intelligent, but allows the openness of his service and his value to add value to her life.
And so you mentioned, high achieving women using the same strategy. They use the same strategy and energy levels in corporate, to be successful in business and work, and they use the same strategy to find love, and it just doesn't work. So if that's not the way to go, yes, do you have a practical tip for high achieving women to find love? Like, what should be the first step when they go out dating? Like, what should be their first step?
I think the first step starts before you go out dating. It's in how you show up for yourself and how open you feel and how connected and how in tune with your own emotions you feel. Because here's the thing: if you're someone who's practicing And it's through movement, it's through dance, it's through singing, it's through things that help you feel connected and alive to your senses. If you're doing that before you go out, you can be the same woman who basically came from work, took a shower, goes on a date. Same woman comes to her house and maybe dances a couple of songs, really connects with something that makes her feel alive, and go out on the date. There's going to be different energy that comes out from that person. There's going to be more relaxed dance. There's going to be slightly more a sense of just joy and radiance that you don't have to work hard at. It's who you are. It's like when you squeeze a lemon, you get lemon juice, right? If you connect with someone and that level of excitement and passion and connected sensuality is connected to your senses. If you're connected to your senses that way, when you go out, then more of that will come out. And 1 degree more open, 1 degree more curious, 1 degree more flirty, 1 degree more sensual might make the difference between the guy saying, absolutely want to see this woman again, or I don't know about her. I don't know if she's compelling enough. So I think that, and it's not about proving yourself to anyone. It's about doing something that enhances your own life, allows you to disconnect just from the mind a little bit and connects your heart more. And that could be conscious breathing. That could be, as I said, dancing, singing, any type of movement that really allows you to feel more somatically. And then, so I would say that. And then when you're out, then the quality of your posture, the quality of your facial expression, the quality of your breath, how deeply you're listening, what questions you're asking. Are you answering questions from your mind, or are you putting a little more heart in it? So there's so many different variables that you can play with. But I'd say if you were to dissect it into something, it's more openness does the trick typically. And more openness is something that doesn't have to be forced. It can come naturally as a byproduct of you doing certain things that already put your nervous system and your heart and your mind in that space where sharing more is the thing to do. It's the natural consequence of the way you're doing things.
Yeah, I love that. More openness and more of who you are. So I know I briefly mentioned attachment style earlier.
Yeah.
Is attachment style something that you also teach your clients and help them identify what attachment style they are?
Yeah, I mean, attachment style is something that's going to be incredibly impactful to every part of a human being's life, not just relationships with romantic relationships. So part of the work that I do is help my clients identify where they are, and it's not just that you don't just have one attachment style set for life. You have a combination of attachment styles, but one is typically predominant, and that's the one that tends to run the show. So part of the work that I do is help my clients identify, okay, when things are showing up this way, whether it's more of an avoidance. Typically, I tend to work with women who are either on the anxious attachment or on the avoidant or disorganized, which is a combination of both. It's not very common that with people who are in a very secure attachment style are struggling in dating. And but it's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does happen, but I get a lot more people who are in one of the three other styles, and it's not their fault. I mean, like, this is not something you choose; it's something that happens. You can't change it. It's not set for life. So part of the work is when they connect with someone and maybe I get a message from a client says, "Hey, he doesn't love me. I just wasted my time." It's like, what happened? I saw him yesterday. He didn't text today. He's like, okay, well, slow down. Let's take a deep breath. What if he texts tomorrow? And then lo and behold, he texts tomorrow and things are happy again. But it's in those moments where the trigger is set. How do you soothe your nervous system so that you get to rewire? This is not as dangerous as it seems. If you do this enough times, then next time it happens, eventually it won't be the alarm of fire in the house. It would be like, okay, this feels uncomfortable, but it's happened before and it could mean something else. And part of the whole thing is also expressing needs. If you connect with someone and you have a pressure for something, then being able to voice it out, saying, hey, I really appreciate when you let me know at least a couple of days in advance that we're going to see each other, versus the same day asking me if we go out. Is that something you could do? Yes. Guess what happens? Then the person starts messaging 2 or 3 days before the date. The person feels like anxious. It's the weekend, he hasn't messaged. So it's a back and forth. It's helping someone understand what you need while also doing your own share and not putting the fears and insecurities that are yours on the other person.
So for someone listening who feels stuck in their dating patterns, what is one powerful reframe or action they can take today after listening to this podcast to start choosing or reacting differently?
One powerful tool, and this is not mine, this comes from Alain de Botton, which is an incredible writer, thinker. He's the owner of School of Life, creator. He talks about the change that is needed for human beings to rewire and to adapt and change the way they relate to people as learning a new language. So imagine that you want to learn Italian, how difficult that is and how long it takes. That's sometimes what's required. Now, there's better methods for learning Italian. There's things that take it to be more proficient in less amount of time, but it's still not an easy thing to do for most people, right? So if you understand that and you take the level of ownership of learning about relationship with the same level of skill and commitment that you would take learning a new language, A, you won't feel frustrated when it doesn't happen overnight. And B, there's work to be done in order to do that. So if you're someone who's struggling with this, I would say two routes. If you're in a space right now where finances are a challenge, do the best you can to go to the podcast. You can go to my YouTube channel. There's a bunch of things you can do for free that will help up to a certain point. Past a certain point, I highly suggest getting help, and that could mean if you're someone who's a single woman and you want to connect with a guy, you can search me. You can bernmendez.com. You can find me. There's a way we can connect. If it's not me, there's therapists, there's other coaches out there. But I would say when you've gotten to a certain point and you've listened to all the podcasts and you've watched all the videos and you're still not where you want to be, do yourself the service of asking for help. It's not being weak. This is something that is it's a nuanced, highly intimate relationship that you want, which in my mind shouldn't be winged. So learning the skills can put you in the category of the ones who do get that kind of relationship in a very short amount of time versus someone who is struggling and tinkering with the chat GPTs of the world. How do I do this? Which you'll get some answers. I'm not saying they're not good answers, but they may not be the right answer you need for creating the level of change. Because at the end of the day, the change that we need to embody is not intellectual in nature, is emotional in nature. Both are required. So learn as much as you can. And when you know you've reached your limit, get some help. Would be my best advice.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything else that you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you or didn't let you.
I would just say this. I think that there's a lot of stigma happening, and more in women than men, because women are unfairly judged if they reach a certain age and they don't have a family and they don't have a guy. It's almost as if they failed, and it's not true. My message to you is if you're that woman, it's not true that you failed. You can create a completely new life starting today going forward. And no one's taught you the things you need. So why should you know the things? And if you take the approach of, I'm going to learn the skills, then it's not shaming in any way. You just need to get some skills of attraction and connection and communication so you can get the kind of relationship you want. So I'd say if you're struggling right now, there is definitely hope. If you're willing to do things that are slightly uncomfortable and scientific in your approach of tackling it.
Again, right back to, that's it's a learnable skill. If you climb the corporate ladder, if you get a degree, you work hard,
Yeah,
your business, your career, why not do the same for love, right? For your relationship. So yeah, love that
exactly.
part. Yes. Now, we always end with our final five rapid fire questions. Every question
Okay, cool.
answered in one word or one sentence maximum.
Sure. Go for it.
The first question is, what is the best dating advice you have ever received?
In one word?
One sentence, one sentence.
um, best thing advice I've ever received. Let me think about that. I would say it is go for what you want, not for what you think you can get.
Right. Wow, that's deep. All right. The next question is, what is the worst dating advice you have ever received?
Just be yourself. And I caveat that by saying, not that yourself is not a good thing, but what self are we talking about? The cynical self, the wounded self. I mean, I think that there's more to it than just be. I mean, it's be your best self. Maybe just be yourself is a bit more like do what you've always done, which may not get you what you want.
Yeah, I love that. Now, the next question is, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
One thing I wish I knew earlier is that trauma is a real thing. And if you don't take a look at trauma, it will run your life.
Mm. If you could relive one day of your life, which day would it be?
Oof. It would be either of the days where my kids were born. Uh, so it's 2 days, when Sebastian and when Santiago were born. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, so cute. Now, last question is, if you could master one skill you don't currently have, what would it be?
Master one skill. Hmm. I mean, I'd say flying if that were a thing. But other than that, I would think, let me think. I'm going to say something that's not as crazy as flying. Um, I think playing the piano or singing would be an amazing skill to have.
Playing the piano.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I prefer flying. You don't trust my even crazy answer from other guest people. So,
Sure.
all right. Now, thank you so much for coming again, and thank you so much for sharing so generously with me and my listeners. I learned so much from you, so thank you so much. And tell my people where they can find you if they want to learn more. Yeah, where should I go?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is to go to my website. It's bernmendez.com. It's BERNMENDZ.com. And from there, you can go. I mean, it will have links to my YouTube channel. You'll have links to case studies where you can see women who've made the transformation. If you want to reach out to me, there's a way to connect. So that's the main hub where you can find me.
Awesome. Yes, I'll put all your links in the show note below. And guys, go follow Ben. Thank him for coming to our show today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast and send this podcast to your friends or your family if they are single. If you know any high achieving women in your life, send them this podcast and and help them find their love today. And I will always leave you the same as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The one is you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into 5Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and take 5Joyan_podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.